I gotta wait. How long I gotta wait for a press record?
Go.
Welcome to the share, where Miss Dreme always has a story.
I'm Dreme, a black woman with many beautiful interconnecting identities. A few I will name at this moment as we get started on this podcast journey together. A Bostonian, born and raised in the inner city, Dorchester and Roxbury neighborhoods, to a teenage single mother who has my whole heart. An educator, I've been working with youth and children since my teenage years, and formally, I have been teaching almost a decade now. That's wild to think about. An entrepreneur, I am the founder of The Chair, a black and brown centered tech platform dedicated to supporting people on their hair journey, where you can design hairboards, connect to hairstylists, and share hair care tips for a more joyous experience. I have a workable site, my prototype. It took me 2 years to build, and now I'm on this adventure that you're currently on with me. My goal for this podcast is to share stories, black stories, educator stories, entrepreneurship stories, and hair stories. I want you to leave each episode with the opportunity to gain new insight, just a glimpse into my world or the worlds that are featured on my podcasts, a little chuckle during your day or night, possibly a little anger to encourage you to advocate for justice, and hope to continue learning and dreaming. So come in and listen to the beautiful voices in the chair as they share their stories, starting with me.
Where we share stories in the chair.
Hello, beautiful people. This is Shalaya. Shalaya, can you please introduce yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Shalaya Morissette. I am the acting chief of Minority Business and Workforce Division for the U.S. Department of Energy in the Office of Energy Justice and Equity, but I am also a mom, an educator, an advocate, and a lover of life overall.
And Shalaya and I know each other because Shalaya is my cousin.
First cousin.
First cousin, absolutely. And truly, truly excited for her to be on the podcast with her busy schedule.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. And Shalaya, can you talk to me about your road to getting to the position where you work in the government now? Because you didn't start going into energy or government goals. Like when I talked to you, you were in higher ed at one point. What does that look like for you?
Well, let's say I'm a lot older than I look, right? You have to start with that. The phrasing is black don't crack, and that is still true. I will carry it with me hopefully until my 70s, 80s, 90s, God willing. It's interesting because energy was not on my radar. It was not in the cards ever prior to stepping into a career fair. I tell a lot of people that your network is your net worth, and it really was for me. I was working in higher ed. And I'll take you 12 years ago. I was living in Atlanta. I graduated from college. I came back home and I was homeless. I was living in a one-bedroom apartment with my brother, his girlfriend, a stepdad, my youngest brother, a dog. And I took over an attic space that had bats. It was 12 years ago. And so I took any job that I could get. I started working in a pharmacy. And then I said, hey, I got to get a master's degree because you need to be competitive. I have this degree in business. What am I going to do? And so there was a manager who has since passed away, Jim, who gave me a shot working in a pharmacy. I worked probably 80 hours a week trying to kill myself to sort of get to a position where I could buy a car and all this stuff. And I made a call and I got an interview at Cambridge College and I got the job. And I stayed there for a couple of years. I was still working the second job at the pharmacy. And a customer actually came in and they said, you know, not realizing my background, they were like, you interested in energy? And I said, what are you talking about? And they said, there is a job fair. You should go. And they were like, what education do you have? So I explained at that point, I did have my master's. I got it for free. Strategic. I worked in higher ed so that I could get the degree for free. That was in the back of my mind during the entire interview. I'll never forget it. Like 1 year, I can do this and then get it with no more student loans. So knowing that I had the education, he said, you're a shoo-in. Just show up, bring your resume. Great. I go to work. And my best friend, who I happened to work with at higher ed in this institution, was like, hey, why are you all dressed up? You going to an interview? And I was like, yeah, do you want to come? So we take our lunch break and we go to this career fair. We run up there and we do all these little sort of mini interviews, and they love her and they hate me.
Why?
I was devastated. Well, why did I bring you? Right? Like, you stole my opportunity. I love you, but, right? And we're still best friends to this day. So she knows this story. Anyway, there were some follow-up interviews. And so I called the guy that told me about it. And I said, you said I was a shoo-in. They liked her. They didn't like me. And he said, okay, let me make a call. Again, the power of the network. He makes a call and I get a real interview with an actual hiring manager. At these career fairs, you sort of get a representative of the company, but there's no real hiring authority sometimes in those roles. And so I get the interview, and my best friend has the follow-up interview the week prior. And unfortunately, she actually lost her mom, the woman that raised her, that Sunday. And she showed up for the interview Monday, and she said, I'm going to do this because I made a commitment, but I'm not mentally in the space to do this, and explain the situation. And they didn't give her the job. And so I did my interview a week later, and before I left the building, they made me an offer that I couldn't refuse. I tripled my salary. So I walk back into the college and I say, hey, Mark, who was my boss at that time, I said, I got this opportunity. And he said, how much? I tell him how much. And he said, I can't even come close. He said, I'm so happy for you. Go do it. I know you're going to be great. And it's been sort of this crazy ride ever since. When I got into energy, I looked around and I was like, there are no black people. There are hardly any women. And to be honest, a lot of these white guys aren't smarter than me. So I said, again, I'm going to go back to school. There's this sort of career reimbursement, professional development, all this stuff. And I said, no, I'm going to get another degree. So I have to wait a year. So I do my year. In that year, I take over the team that I was working on. And they said, you can hire some people. Again, power of the network. So I said, listen, you actually already interviewed this person. Could I bring them in for a second interview? And they were like, yeah, who is it? I explained that it's my best friend. So we bring her in. I'm not part of the interview process. We kept it on the up and up. We interviewed everybody, and she was the best candidate, thankfully. And so she started working with me. So now you have 2 black people. My supervisor happened to be a black woman, which was rare. There weren't any others in the state at that time. Now, here's the dynamics. 80% of Boston is black. 8% of the state is black. So it can appear that we dominate, right, this location, and we don't. So a lot of the service territories of energy companies have minorities in them, but they don't actually work for the companies that they're paying for their energy. And so I started to realize this. I started asking questions like, how come there aren't more black people here? What is limiting us from participating? So I found out about this organization called ABE, which is African American Association of Blacks in Energy. And I started to get involved. So it's a nonprofit, it's a national organization, and I took over for the chapter president. So now I'm getting a lot more exposure to the other energy companies, our competitors, smaller companies, everything from attorneys in energy to engineers, just full scope, field, everything. And then I got tapped on the shoulder. And I said, hey, do you think that you could do this thing? I said, sure, I think I could do a thing. And it was basically project management, program management, and technical sort of assistance and backup. I said, yes, of course.
So you're gotten the other degree. You have 2 degrees. You've done the higher ed. So of course, you've done project management.
Yes,
but
of
now,
course.
So now it just looks differently.
It just looks different, right? And it's energy, and you don't have a lot of control because in the sector, there's so many pieces to build out a project or to do a thing. There could be 10 departments involved in a process. And I'll make sure that I explain it a little bit. At that time, I said to my existing manager, I said, hey, I think I'm going to go back to school. And I got accepted to Dartmouth, and I was going to go back for mechanical engineering, which is crazy because having an undergraduate degree in business and a graduate degree in education, it's not really one and the same here. And so I said, I'm going to do it anyway.
Why mechanical engineering? Why not?
To me,
yeah.
Mechanical engineers are the most practical. If the world were to fall apart tomorrow, a mechanical engineer can take something apart and understand how it works. So I can appreciate that. Sort of the top tier of engineers in terms of pay and complexity are really aerospace engineers, chemical engineers, and I wasn't going after either of those. You have electrical, which I really just wasn't interested in. It was very isolated. Mechanical was that sort of full sweep of you can look at anything and break it down.
So it still comes through as an interdisciplinary approach.
Absolutely. That's the way my brain works. So I said, I'm in, except that they don't have night classes at Dartmouth. It's not a thing. So I said, okay, I guess we're going to pivot. So I didn't start immediately. Thankfully, the company I was working for actually had a program with a discount to Excelsior. And so the only engineering program that really was a good fit for me was nuclear engineering. And so I start this, and I remember my boss saying, "You think you can do that?" And it broke my heart. And I don't think that she ever knew that it hurt me to hear another Black woman say that. And I can't tell you that she meant it in a negative way, but I took it that way.
Do you think she was projecting her own insecurities onto you?
Absolutely. But at the same time, she was incredibly supportive in my role. I just had all of these mixed feelings about why that response. And she may have just been referring to, do you have the time management skills? Can you do this, right? It's a lot. At that time, I didn't have my daughter. This was 8 years ago. Yeah, 7, 8 years ago at this point. And so I start this journey, obviously with a little bit of spite in me to say, of course I can.
I can do it.
I can do this. So I start the journey. I'm paying for it out of pocket, getting reimbursed, and then I get tapped on the shoulder, right? So I make this transition, and now I'm a technical inspector in the field. So if you can't see me on this podcast, but I'm 5'2", and I've been 5'2" since 6th grade, right? And there is no hope in the world that I'm ever going to get taller. So I'm in the field telling guys who have been doing this kind of field work in natural gas that they're doing it incorrectly. Incredibly intimidating. No other Black women are on the team doing this exact work. A lot of training my brain to understand what they do, have respect for them, and sort of straddle the line of, I'm trying to keep you alive and safe, because we talk about complacency in a job. When you do the same thing over and over, it's more likely that you will have an injury because you become complacent. It's like driving drunk because you know your way home. You're more likely to get into an accident closer to your home. We know this to be true. So the same is true in the world of field supervision when we're doing work outside. We get just into the rhythm and we screw up. We don't mean to, but we get complacent. So my job in that was really to do a lot of inspections, make sure it was done right. By the end of it, I had a really good relationship with most of the people in the field because I came to the job and I said, I respect you. I don't do what you do, but I've been taught to do these things. So you help me, I help you sort of relationship.
Yeah, really making it a collaborative instead of I'm your superior conversation.
Yeah. And it comes to the point where if I'm not doing the work, who are you to come in and say you're doing it wrong versus, hey, did you know that the book tells you to do it this way, and this is what we're going to get an audit for, and it gets really technical. But the guys respected me by the end of it, and it was actually a loving environment by the end of it. And I worked with great people. I had some amazing peers that taught me so much of what I know today. And so giving myself a little bit of credit, I really dove in. I was like, I need to know everything. Tell me everything. I had notes. I was watching videos. I did everything on my own for that. And then I got tapped on the shoulder again.
Look, it's my commercial. We will be right back.
It's more than just a bad hair day. It's a journey. Finding the right hairstyle isn't easy, nor is finding the right stylist or the right products. Looking in every corner of the web gets messy, overwhelming, and exhausting. All the ads, the articles, the products, the videos. It shouldn't be this hard, but it is. And now, it isn't.
The Chair.
A black and brown centered platform where you can design hairboards, connect to hairstylists, and share hair care tips for a new, joyful path on your hair journey. Avoid the clutter, save yourself hours, months, and even years of research and poor trial and error. Everything you need and only what you need is in one place. Hairboards made by people like you, for you. Find the right products, the right people, the right answers for you, stress-free. Join
The Chair.
community and make every day a great hair day. When you share your pain, you allow others to help you. And when you share your success, you help others get theirs. Lean on
The Chair.
We got you.
No stress, no strife. In The Chair. The Chair. The Chair. All right.
I was asked to do sort of being the liaison between field work and program work, understanding, okay, what's done in the field? Why doesn't it correlate to what management is doing inside? So taking that and then reporting up to our directors and senior VPs. And that was fun. It was just a different lens. While doing this work, I became the first African-American board member for a group called NEWE, New England Energy Women Environment, all the good stuff. But I became the first African-American on their board, and they had been around at that time for 14 years. Now, we never said it. We never knew it until 2 years after I was on the board because they wanted my voice. It wasn't about that I happened to be a Black woman, which was really cool when it came out, when we all realized it. So I get on this board, and I'm doing this event, and I hear this amazing Black woman say, I'm releasing a book, and it's all in energy. And I was like, I've got to support her because it's very rare that you see a Black woman in energy who has written a book, who's also overly qualified, highly technical. And so I sent an email in the middle of the night, and I said, listen, I want to help you. And she wrote back, I think it's Christmas. At the time, I didn't realize the significance of that response, but her birthday is on Christmas. And so we stayed in touch. She left her employer then and went on to work in the Biden administration, with her sort of out of the picture and me just sort of supporting her behind the scenes to say, if you need anything or if there's any expertise that you need from the Northeast, I'm still here. We have roots here. Anyway, with my relationships between NEWE and Abe and working still in energy, I was asked to work on a curriculum for a local school called Dearborn STEM Academy. I was helping in the nonprofit capacity to write out this energy curriculum, really around engineering. At the time, I was not an engineer. And so I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. So I tapped into all my resources, helped them write it, and really gave them sort of the lens of what is it like to be a young person in today's world, learning about something that you can't touch, feel, and you're not paying an energy bill, right? When we wrote it, we got to real fundamentals of you need to be outside of the classroom. I help write this, and the teacher that's supposed to teach it bails at the last minute. School starts September. They call me in August and say, we don't have anybody to teach this. Could you teach it? And I was honest. I said, you're on crack. You can't possibly believe that I'm going to do this. One, you can't afford me. I'm making a lot of money in energy. You're educators, right? We all know that educators are not paid enough, right? You cannot afford me. And they were like, no, we can. We got a grant. We can pay you. And I said, well, I'm not going to leave my job for a temporary assignment. This doesn't make sense. We got to make this work. So anyway, I had an amazing team of people at my employer, and they said, well, how about this? You can keep your benefits. You go part-time. And I said, will you really let me do this? Yeah. So I was teaching full-time, working part-time at the energy company, and I would legitimately teach from 7 a.m. to 1, and then I would work 1 to like 6:30 at night. It was great. So I was still making good money. I didn't lose my benefits. And it was the greatest time of my life to teach.
Why?
11th and 12th graders are that weird sweet spot. So I had kids that had to live through COVID. And so my seniors were miserable. For the most part, they were absolutely miserable. We didn't get prom. We didn't get all the stuff. And we're barely going to have a graduation. Then I had my 11th graders. And my 11th graders were hype. We are 11th graders. We're going to graduate next year. We're going to get prom. And their approach was still young and excited and open. And to have someone that looked like them in the classroom was really important. They embraced me. My seniors, I had a couple that absolutely loved me. I still keep in touch with them to this day. And I had others that were just sort of in that slump of senior year. I don't want to do this anymore. It's been pretty miserable the last couple of years. So I got full scope people.
Do you remember a favorite lesson or a favorite moment that a student said to you in class that follows you all the time?
There are so many because those are still my babies. I just had a milestone birthday and they all came out for it. There were high school breakups that were real. There was a time where, and my students, I think this is one of their favorites, we lost power at the school, right? We had no technology and it was during the day, so we had light. And I said, okay, cell phones off. Turn your cell phones off and you can ask me anything as a human. And I'm sure that my fellow teachers would be like, you are so wrong for this. But they needed it, right? And we truly didn't have it. It's engineering. I need technology to support. So anyway, the questions that they ask were, such a reflection of where they were mentally. And it helped me get back to being 16, 17, because technically our brains can't get back to who we were at that time. Even when we think, oh, I was this kind of person, you mentally can't get there. Your brain has been fully developed after 25. So the questions that they asked were things like, Miss, they would call me Miss because my last name is kind of complicated. And they said, Miss, if I got pregnant, what would you tell me to do? That's wild to me that that's what they're asking. Then I had questions about pedophilia and why is it this way in certain cultures? And then I had full scope of, Miss, what do you think I should get for my first car? Right? It's sort of the simple things that they were thinking about that were so real for me. It helped me just get back to that place of, oh my gosh, you all have not lived. When people say you haven't lived enough to have an opinion, that's where they were, right? Even though they were living in it, they hadn't been through enough. Even though on paper their lives were complicated, they didn't have enough experience. So I always think about that when I'm talking to other young people to say, I'm not downplaying your experience, but once you leave this, life is so much bigger. 4 years, I would tell them, you're not going to talk to these people, right? So there's a very small group that like is still connected to each other, and I love it. And I think I'm part of the reason that they stay connected because there is a group chat of us saying, hey guys, you good? Everybody good? I think one of the most critical lessons that we did was I shared my paycheck. I said, do you want to know what a 6-figure paycheck looks like? And they were like, yeah. That was mind-blowing to them because they got a real life breakdown of like, when you get this check, you think when you make $100,000 that you're going to bring home the whole 100. We all know as adults that there's taxes and Uncle Sam wants his money. But I was able to break that down to say the school that we're in, the roads that we drive on, the library that you're able to go to, the resources that you're able to receive. This is how it happens through taxes. And sort of getting them to understand that everything that we have as a society is based on taxes, whether you like it or not. I don't enjoy paying taxes, but I'm also glad that, folks that need it have resources. I'm okay with that. So getting them to see it, and I could see the light bulb like, oh, so I wouldn't be able to do that if my parents didn't pay taxes. But it was also the heartbreaking story of an 11th grader not being able to tell time. You made it to 11th grade, and you can't look at a clock and tell time. And so when I brought them for a tour, we went to the local union, IBEW, and it says no cell phones whatsoever. You can't even bring them in the building. This is a training facility. And they were very upset. Why? What if my mom calls? What if? There's nothing that you can do if someone calls you right now. If you are not a doctor, if you don't have access to millions of dollars, there's nothing that you can do. Put the phone in the locker, move on. And so when they wanted to know what time it was, and they looked up and they couldn't tell time on an old school clock, whoa, your education system has failed you. That was a reality. And I explained to them that telling time, something as simple as being able to read it on this type of clock, there are 2 places in your life that you may end up, one of which I hope you never are, which is in a jail cell, and the other is a proctored exam. You can't have your cell phone in those spaces, and you want to know how much time do I have left in both instances, right? That was a wake-up call for them and for me to say, we have a problem with our education system, and it's not your fault, but you are a product of it. And the world is not going to recognize that for you. When you go into workplaces, it's an expectation that you know this stuff. And for whatever reason, whether it's your parents or just not enough exposure that you don't know these basics, an employer doesn't care. They're there to make a profit. So those are the simple things, but we did cool stuff. Like we went to construction sites. We flew a drone in the atrium. We did all sorts of things. We did gas inspections. We had leak investigations at the school. We brought speakers in. We brought them to a welding shop. We brought welders in. They actually made stuff. We built a whole smart city. We did really cool stuff. And to this day, they're always like, Miss, remember when we did this or that? So it was by far one of the greatest experiences I've ever had.
From C-Suite to Coloring Book, I'm Shalaya Morissette, the former Chief of Minority Business and Workforce Division for the U.S. Department of Energy. Today, I bring you Becoming a Chiefess, a coloring book featuring women in my life that are in energy with you and your families.
Oh, and if you're interested to learn more about my experiences as a Black woman and educator in Guangzhou, China, I wrote my first ebook titled Nowhere and Everywhere, Captured Emotions of a Beautifully Broken Love Story. It is on lulu.com. Take a read and see some beautiful photography of mine. Enjoy the rest of the show.
But at that time, I got a call from the federal government and they said, do you think you could do this job?
I love these being tapped on the shoulder moments. I need some of that energy.
It's networking. It's about who you know and how you show up in those moments where you can showcase your abilities. And so I got that call, and it was from the woman that I said I want to support. And she was like, do you think you can do this? And I said, yeah. And she was like, well, you should apply. The position's open. And that's it. She wasn't guaranteeing that you were going to get the job, but she said, if you're interested, there's something here for you. Anyway, I got the job. And I had to build a team. So I sort of handpicked. I went through all these resumes and I really tapped into the network and said, do you know anybody that could do this thing? And I built a team with business in mind, Black people in particular in mind, those from tribal nations, the Hispanic population, Asian population, veterans, returning citizens, the full scope of when we say minority. For the feds, it's not just race. It's everything else. And that includes accessibility. In the federal government, we say DEIA instead of just DEI because it really is about accessibility. If you cannot access the information in a way that you can consume it, what is it worth? If you are hearing impaired, if you have a hidden disability, you still deserve access to opportunity. That's how I treat it. And so anyway, I built this team. I came up with a strategic plan. I've traveled in the first year, and I'm in my second year. I did 132 speaking engagements. And everybody says, how in the world did you do that? And I tell people I jumped out of a plane. The first speaking gig I did, my voice was so shaky. It was in Houston. I'll never forget it. And I told the audience, I said, listen, do not ask me for my strategic plan because it was the second week of work. And I've since gone back, and it was phenomenal. They fully embraced me, and I was able to deliver a strategic plan of what we were going to do. But in that same month, I took one of my seniors who had graduated, and I had promised him a gift after. I said, if you make it through graduation, if you do all the stuff that you do, we should jump out of a plane. And I called, and he said, let's do it. And so we jumped out of a plane, and in that moment, I said, I can do anything. If I can risk my life, there is no reason for my voice to ever shake when I speak. And it worked. And so I hit the ground running, and it hasn't stopped.
So what keeps you there?
The people. It's my ability to help business owners gain access to information that they didn't know was there is a game changer. At the federal level, I deal in billions of dollars.
Yeah.
100,000 is nothing to me. When I do a release and it's $300 million at a minimum, those are crazy numbers to think about. But now it's so casual because I know if one business wins $100 million, the job opportunities there are crazy. It is generational change at its finest. So it's really being able to make an impact that I can measure that's important to me. If it weren't for that, I'd probably go to the private sector and make $1 million overnight, right? Because of what I know and how to gain access to things, that it's really the people. I have more people to help. That's why I'm still here.
When you think about young people and talking to young people who are possibly interested in energy or maybe not, and they learn that they're interested in a new field, what advice do you have for them to keep exploring?
Stay curious. Without curiosity, is life worth living? Is always my question. You should be questioning everything. Even the science that we knew 150 years ago has changed. There are new things happening all the time. When I talk to them about energy, I try to make energy as sexy as possible because they only think of nerds. Well, I'm not an engineer. Energy is big business. You're talking trillions of dollars over the next 5 years that we're going to make investments in. Why would you not want to be here? If you don't have energy, you're not charging your cell phone, you're not flying, you're not doing anything without energy. When we talk about it, I start to tell them what they didn't know. An electric plane that can fly from California to Alaska, we've done it. Fully electric. We've had flying cars for a long time. And some people are like, what are you talking about? People, it's helicopters, right? Helicopters are just too loud, but essentially they are flying cars. And yes, we have helicopters that look like cars, right? It's very simple. But we have other advancements within hydrogen and all sorts of technology that people just don't know about because they're not in the circle. They're not in the network talking about it. We are doing phenomenal things. And if you're not a part of it, I'm very nervous, worried, losing sleep at night that we are going to create things that we can't engage in or that we will be at the mercy of. And when I say we, I mean Black people in particular. We're not part of the conversations. And this is how technology is developed that is a burden for us. People don't realize when you go into the bathroom and you have motion sensor technology to wash your hands, it's not going to recognize your skin. If you understand how light works, the people that created it were all white men. Nobody was at the table when they made it. So there was no consideration for us. And so your frustration builds. And you look at this and say, why does it not work? Because I wasn't part of that. Had I been, it probably would have built differently. And the same is true for our watches, all of those smart watches that we wear. If you read the fine print, it literally tells you that you may not get accurate data because of the color of your skin. Of darker skin, it doesn't absorb light the same way. But again, we're not part of the conversation. And so I need physicists. Understand that people that actually keep our atomic time clocks, that clock, when you look at your phone, is actually held by a physicist down in San Antonio, Texas, and they happen to be a native tribe. We have to steal physicists, right? Because we're not producing enough of them. If I can't get people excited about just going into the sciences, STEM overall, we're going to be behind in the world. We're already behind. And so I tell them, whatever it is that you want to do, do it. Do it to its fullest capacity. Make sure that you are networking. And by networking, we never give tangible examples of what it means. Yeah. And that bothers me. Because I say, oh, you should just network. No, it's like, learn how to be a good friend. We've lost the art of friendship, of I should be calling you not just to, hey, I'm doing a thing. Do you want to do it? No, I'm calling you. How you doing? How you feeling? Just check in with people and not ask for anything. Show up when they need you. Or be honest. We've lost truly the idea of what it is to be a friend. And when you network, that's what you're getting to. If you're not someone's friend, they're not going to recommend you just off rip of, oh, yeah, I met this young person. They seem to be nice. That's not going to happen. You need someone that's going to be your advocate when you're not there. You need someone that is thinking about you. That's how networking works. That's what I would tell people that are young, that want to do something different. Get a mentor, ask questions, and ask, what questions should I be asking if I don't know? Because you usually don't know. You don't know what you don't know.
Yes, this is true. When I think about networking, for me, it's not just a shaking of the hand and, hey, it's nice to meet you. My name is Dreme. It's building. It's adding Legos on top of each other. And that is a dinner. That is a coffee. That is attending their event without any expectation. I think people assume networking requires all these expectations. And I'm like, no, it's the beginning.
It's just the beginning. And it's the simple things, too. I mean, a friend of mine is a president of a school, and she was like, hey, let's go for a walk. And we talked and walked for an hour. And because of that, now she can text me and say, hey, I need somebody over at whatchamacallit. Yeah, no problem. I got you. Here's the email intro. Done. Because I got a sense of who you are and that you're good on what you say. You showed up on time for the walk. You didn't have me standing around waiting, on and on and on. You get to know people in a bigger way. But unfortunately, the younger people today, because of their exposure to things that give them instant gratification, struggle with patience. Not all, but it is a product of their environment. It's not their fault. If you didn't have dial-up back in the day, you are patient, man. You are so patient. But today, everything should be rapid, right? And that's not how networking works. It is a patient game. Making six figures is patience. It really is. And it's also a lot of being well-liked. I'm going to say the truth. People don't like when I say it. Sometimes advancing is not about your hard skills. It's about who gets along with you. It's about how you make people feel. You could be the smartest person and you never get any sort of promotion because you don't know how to talk to people. It's so important to really hone that skill of being a good human.
Yeah, and I think it's important that when you think about a good human, it doesn't mean that you're being fake. You really have to be authentic. You're really invested in people's conversations instead of throwing out language that you think people will like, because people can spot that. They're like, oh, this person isn't genuine. You want to have those genuine relationships, even if it takes years to build, even after one interaction. You want that interaction to be so genuine that people are like, I'm interested.
Yeah. And you have to be willing to be vulnerable,
Mm-hmm.
right? To say, hey, I'm struggling with this and I don't know why, or whatever that is. But it's also the straddling of the line of being a friend, but also not asking someone new in your life to be your therapist. Sometimes we think that your friend should be everything to you, and it's not. But that takes time. You have to sort of go through that process and learn, that I probably shouldn't ask them about that. But sometimes if your mentor is going through a divorce, you want to know sometimes the details of how did it get there? Because you are young and you're growing, and it's likely that you will get married or get into a difficult situation, whatever it looks like, and how do you deal with that? Or what are the things I don't want to do? Those are real questions that you probably should be asking if you develop that relationship enough, because I'm a firm believer that the way you handle stress is how you handle success. If you are not good under pressure, being successful is a tremendous amount of stress. You have to live up to people's expectations, your own expectations even more so. And when you answer to a higher power, when you have people that are on your team and you don't want to disappoint them, or you're like me, a type A personality, you just can't afford to make mistakes. And that pressure will kill you, right? It'll physically kill you. So it's that delicate balance of getting to know people and keeping all that stuff in check and managing your own stress of the process of networking.
Oh, no, thank you for that. I think that is great advice. Well, Shalaya, thank you so much for sitting in the chair and sharing your stories. I truly appreciate you taking the time out.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. This is awesome. The chair is dope.
Thank you.
Welcome to the chair, where Miss Dreme always has a story.
Thank you for listening to an episode of The Chair. I, of course, would love your continued support. Let me know what you think of this episode by doing all the things. Subscribe, comment, and come back next week, every week. Enjoy the rest of your beautiful day. Or if you are like me, enjoy that moonlight and that one star under all your city lights. Love you. Talk to you later.
The chair.
How long I gotta wait for a person to record?
Go.
We support her. Shit.
Do your...
Welcome to the chair, where Miss Dreme always has a story. Where we share